Welcome to the Ohio Civil Rights Commission 2022 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Art Essay and Multimedia Contest Awards Ceremony. I'm Lori Burris, Chair of the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, and on behalf of the commissioners, we are so excited to celebrate here with you today. Each year, the Commission sends the MLK contest information to thousands of schools, and each year we receive hundreds of submissions from all corners of our great state. This year's theme, Fighting Against Injustice. During the civil rights struggles of the 1960s, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a leading voice against social injustices. He helped others see that the fight against racism was connected to other injustices because all people are connected to one another. In his renowned essay, Letter from a Birmingham Jail, Dr. King said, Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Each participant in the contest was invited to submit work that creatively described an injustice that they had seen or experienced and explained what they would have done or did do to fight against that injustice, just like Dr. King did. The responses were creative, heartfelt, and promising, but only 14 rose to the top. The students you will hear from today are exemplary, and we congratulate them.
Hello, my name is Angela Phelps-White, the Executive Director of the Ohio Civil Rights Commission. Here we are at the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Art Essay and Multimedia Ceremony. We are celebrating the works of students from around the state of Ohio who submitted entries highlighting how the words written by Dr. King as far back as April 16, 1963 are relevant in their lives today. This year's theme came from a letter written by Dr. King during his imprisonment in a jail in Birmingham, Alabama, for participating in nonviolent demonstrations against segregation. In this letter, Dr. King wrote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." Dr. King wrote this letter in response to an article titled "A Call for Unity" in a newspaper that was given to him while incarcerated. The article was written by 8 clergymen who condemned Dr. King's actions for helping to organize and participating in civil disobedience by engaging in nonviolent demonstrations against racial injustice. In the article, the clergy claimed that his actions were unwise and untimely, but they also claimed that he was an outsider coming into Birmingham. It is that latter claim of being an outsider that Dr. King responded that he was in Birmingham because he felt compelled to respond to the injustice there. He stated that he could not, and I quote, "sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham." This response was based on Dr. King's astute recognition that we are all interconnected in this nation. Knowing our connections with each other, it becomes incumbent upon all of us to fight injustice wherever it may exist. In essence, we are all in this together, woven in the same fabric of life. If one directly experiences injustice, we all indirectly experience injustice because we are so inexplicably intertwined. No matter how we try to separate ourselves by superficial or artificial boundaries, fate will always bind us together. Injustice anywhere in this nation is a negative force and is harmful to justice elsewhere in this nation. Today, the contest winners will share in their own words and collections of art a situation where they have seen or experienced injustice and describe how they, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., responded to those situations of injustice. The candid and detailed accounts of the experiences of these young Ohioans are astounding and inspiring. I would like to congratulate and thank these young winners for providing us with the opportunity to see life's events through their lens. Now, let's listen to a brief message from our First Lady of the State of Ohio, Fran DeWine.
Hello, I'm Ohio First Lady Fran DeWine. Congratulations to all the participants and the winners of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Art, Essay, and Multimedia Contest. I am grateful to be here with you today to celebrate your accomplishments. I am glad we are all celebrating the life and legacy of Dr. King. Dr. King dreamed of a better life for all Americans. Through his words, he inspired so many people. Your creative work continues to commemorate and spread the important lessons and principles of Dr. King. Congratulations on this accomplishment, and thank you for sharing your inspirational creativity.
And now, without further ado, let's hear from our 2022 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Award contest winners.
I'm Victoria Gavin in 6th grade at TCP World Academy. 2022 Martin Luther King Jr. Essay. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a famous civil rights leader who believed that everyone should be treated equally. And I believe that too. I have never experienced racial injustice, but I believe it is wrong. Additionally, I think that being treated poorly is unfair. Violence is never the answer to solving racial and social injustices. My essay was just these events, ideas, and solutions. Notably, because I have a civic responsibility to make a contribution as well as a society, just like Dr. King. A major issue, both then and now, is people of color being killed for unnecessary reasons in the most brutal ways. For example, last year, May 25th, 2020, George Floyd was murdered by a police officer who had him pinned down with his knee on his neck for over 9 minutes. Witnesses say that George Floyd told the officer more than 20 times that he couldn't breathe. Unfortunately, his cries were ignored by Officer Chapman, and as a result, he died within those 9 minutes. That officer, Derek Chapman, was sentenced to 22.5 years behind bars. I believe he was found guilty partly because of Darnella Frazier and others who reported vital footage from their cell phones of this entire event. This is an example of a white police officer abusing his authority. Moreover, how important it is to have video footage to prove what happened during the incident. In like manner, just 2 days after the Floyd trial ended, another black man, Daunte Wright, was murdered by another white officer. In this case, the police officer, Kim Potter, reportedly confused her gun with a taser and shot him. There was evidence from her body camera. From the video, it is clear that she said, "I'll tase you, taser, taser." Her words could not be mistaken. Most people believe that she meant to pull out her taser. Yet, others believe she was racist and shot him on purpose. Potter is currently on trial, facing first-degree and second-degree manslaughter charges, according to an article from CNN.com. In 2012, 17-year-old Trayvon Martin was shot and killed by George Zimmerman, a Hispanic neighborhood watch volunteer. Zimmerman saw the young man and called 911 to support a suspicious person. The 911 dispatcher instructed him not to get out of his vehicle or approach this suspicious person. Zimmerman told the police Martin was suspicious because he was wearing a hoodie. Martin was just eating Skittles and drinking an iced tea. Zimmerman followed Martin for several minutes before confronting him, which ultimately led to a fight between the two. Zimmerman claimed self-defense and was found not guilty of murder or manslaughter by a jury, July 13, 2013. Zimmerman could have simply stayed in the car, and this young man's life could have been saved. To conclude, it is believed that racism started over 5,000 years ago, and by the looks of it, it's not ending anytime soon. There are many ways to improve upon social and racial violence injustices. One of the most important ways is to hold people accountable for their actions when committing these unnecessary acts of violence. My classmates and I came up with an invention to install new emergency buttons in a car. We named this invention Life Watching for the People, LW4TP, in honor of George Floyd. All these devices include a microphone and a camera. You can press these buttons if you feel in danger. There are 3 buttons total. The top button will be located on the right side of the driver's sun visor. The middle button will be located close to your radio or gear shifter. The bottom button will be located between your emergency brake and regular brake. These devices can prove what happens in a situation. This will help support the victim side of the story, but it will also be a way to hold people accountable for their actions. Many civil rights activists are working to accomplish Dr. King's share, and I'm one of them. I believe that if more people are caught on video committing these crimes and are held accountable, then these senseless murders may happen less often.
Martin Luther King Jr. brought everyone together like puzzle pieces. That's the point of this drawing. Martin Luther King had to find those puzzle pieces before putting them together. When everything seemed to be going all right, another problem would be thrown at him. It's like when you're building a puzzle and it's going well until one piece does not fit. Then you have to go looking for the correct piece. That's exactly what had happened to Martin Luther King, but he kept looking for that missing piece no matter how long it took. Eventually, it paid off.
I'm Skylar Sachs, and I'm from Westside Montessori. I won the Martin Luther King 7th grade essay contest. Here's my essay. Dr. Martin Luther King once said, "Nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. By not realizing our ignorance, we will never be able to find the truth. By not knowing that we have an unwarranted or offending prejudice, we find ourselves stuck with it without realizing how really wrong it is. How can we become better and get over these prejudices and misconceptions when we realize if we never realize we have them? If we are to become the best people we can be, or rather, the best nation and civilization we can be, we will not only have to identify, but also get rid of all of our invalid prejudices and purge our ignorance. These prejudices hold us back, separate us in ways we do not even recognize, and if we are not careful, they can and will rip us apart. There are many reasons why ignorance and prejudice are so dangerous, especially when they arise at the same time. First of all, any type of ignorance can be extremely harmful since it is based on a lack of knowledge. Basically, ignorance is just being uninformed. Prejudice, however, is something deeper. In fact, prejudice is formed from ignorance. At times, these two can be so closely intertwined that it is hard to tell the difference in action. Prejudice can be based on ignorance because it is born in lies and misconceptions that can quickly become violent and harsh. Not only are they intertwined, they are both highly contagious. They are a parasite to the mind, a highly advanced infectious disease traveling from one mind to the next. They do this by preying on the young, the weak-minded, and all those without their own ideals to grasp and hold on to. It can be children, teenagers, adults, the elderly, anyone. Everyone is highly susceptible to prejudice because it is highly believable. A seemingly mundane example of this happened to my mother. As a child, she was one of the only Jewish kids in her class. One day, a little boy came up to her and asked her where she was hiding her horns. That boy did not realize he was being prejudicial and that his comment was offending. He truly believed that it was a valid question. That question was asked out of pure, unadulterated ignorance. After that, he told a few classmates. Ignorant as they were about issues like these, like most children are, they believed him. Though he did not realize it, he had demonstrated exactly what I like to think of as the ripple effect of prejudice. In modern day, occurrences such as my mom experienced are fewer and farther between than they used to be, but they are not entirely unheard of. I feel that it is my responsibility to speak up if I ever encounter such a situation. As I said, prejudices arise from ignorance. As ignorance is the absence of knowledge, I feel a good first step to take is to speak up against prejudice to try and educate that person on the subject. I will not only try and educate the person right then and there, but I feel that it might be necessary to educate myself more on the subject and then try and meet up with them later on. For example, if someone in my class came up and asked where my horns were, I would first explain that Jews do not have horns, and add that their question derives from an old prejudice that arises from the idea that all Jews are affiliated with the devil. I would then educate myself more on what really led to the statement. I might research the history of it, who started it, where it comes from, and why it was first started. In this way, I will be able to peacefully and effectively help that person overcome their prejudice while simultaneously educating them and myself on the subject. I feel that in our fight to end prejudice, it is not only important to educate one person at a time, but also to have many become aware and educated on that topic at once. One way I can do this is by having a peaceful protest like Dr. King did. The audience might be limited, so I can film it and put it online so that it gets a larger audience. I can also post about the issue online, which can be very effective because the internet touches many people. I can set up posters around my neighborhood to raise awareness. I can go and present about it in school, or I can even start a club. If there is not an organization for the issue, I can start one, and if there already is one, I can join it or donate to it. No matter how big or small, every action is of substantial significance. As a result of ignorance, prejudice forms, spreads, and affects us all unknowingly. The truth is that the more ignorant we are, the more susceptible we are to prejudice. It is so dangerous because as soon as someone shares it with others, they adopt it as their own. Like a virus, it spreads very quickly because it is so easy to believe. Though it will be hard, seemingly impossible, I truly believe that if we can band together and try our hardest, we can defeat the world's worst demons once and for all: ignorance and prejudice.
During my life, I've seen body shaming and racism towards my friends and my sister. My sister is adopted from Guatemala, and I witnessed other people and even her friends treating her horribly because of where she comes from and how she is different. In my picture, I incorporated scenes that I have seen and heard drawn in the shape of Martin Luther King Jr. I hope people that see my artwork are moved by the images as much as I am when I created it. Thank you so much for recognizing my work and allowing me to help other people. Thank you, Lauren Gasser.
Hi, my name is Zoe Chamali, and I'll be reading you my MLK essay. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is a well-known activist who made a huge and direct impact on discrimination, especially towards people who are Black. He's admired and constantly recognized for how he helped reshape a racist system that existed in our country. Unfortunately, that racist system has not been completely reshaped. It still exists today, and its prominence can be seen when looking at what Asians have experienced, especially during the peak of the pandemic. I myself am one of those Asians who have been treated unfairly just because people don't know who to blame when a deadly virus is going around. The first time I experienced racism due to the pandemic was when I was sitting down in a bus seat. I saw a guy around my age look me directly in the eye and walk towards me. My friends didn't notice it or pay any mind, but I was a little thrown off by it. He walked a bit faster, pushing people a little to get to the back of the bus where I happened to sit. Making direct eye contact, he said, "Since you're Asian, did you start the pandemic?" I looked at him with surprise and shock written all over my face, that someone would have the audacity and twisted courage to say that to my face. He instantly followed up his offensive statement with another. "Do you have COVID?" "No, of course not," I said. "Why would I have COVID? Me being Asian plays no part in that." He just laughed like he told the funniest joke in the world, and I had the most hilarious response. He, still laughing, just went, yeah, and turned, walking back towards the group of people he was looking at before. I turned to my own friends, who had their mouths wide open in disbelief. One of them looked concerned and upset, while I could see the other with a look of pure anger all over their face. My concerned friend instantly checked up on me and apologized for not saying anything. A polar opposite, my other friend suddenly stood up and yelled at the guy. "You think you're so funny? I hope you know how racist that is." I sat there, saying absolutely nothing. Something about the notion of actually standing up for myself scared me, and I would never have the courage or the guts to say that to someone. It was partially because I wasn't a big fan of talking to someone I didn't know, but I was also afraid that because they were saying something racist, straight to my face, they would not be afraid to get physical either. This fear continued to follow me throughout the pandemic. Anytime I ever experienced any kind of racism or slightly offensive act, I kept my mouth shut. I didn't know how to be more like my friends, able to speak up in a time where injustice was happening. A lot of the time, I was just experiencing dirty looks or death glares, which is also how most acts of racism committed against me started out. Sometimes there and there. I never knew if it was actually targeted towards me, or if it was just someone having a bad day, misdirecting their anger towards a stranger. I never wanted to find out. Yet another time I experienced an injustice was when I was sitting down in a mall cafe. I noticed a teenage guy giving me a dirty look. He glanced at the COVID-19 sign on the back at me. Pulling his mask up, he caught me staring at him confused and instantly changed his focus to his phone. I decided to ignore it and opened my book to start working on my summer reading, pulling out the papers for the homework and a pencil. Starting the book, I noticed out of the corner of my eye that the same guy was getting out of his chair. He was heading in my direction, but the exit was the same way, so I ignored my gut telling me something was off. The guy came up to me. I blame your kind for all of this, and walked away. I sat there shocked, looking down and keeping my mouth shut. Time and time again, something similar happened. It was true that I wanted to stand up for myself. If I could have, I would have screamed and yelled and told them to stop and that I was just an innocent kid. It felt so unfair to me that people would look at me and instantly associate me with something so bad and horrifying. I felt targeted over a pandemic that was never even started by Asians. It had only originated in an Asian country. Now, I recognize I have the power to change people's perception of COVID-19 and Asians. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "People fear to get along because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they do not communicate with each other." I feel as though if I stand up for myself and other Asians, I can help make a difference just like him. Spreading awareness about the discrimination that grew out of the pandemic is something that's important to me. Talking to adults about the issue is one way that I know I could combat this issue. Ideas and beliefs are often passed down from person to person. If I start with conversing with adults, they are likely to spread it to their peers and younger people. Another idea that I thought of to spread awareness is social media. Even a simple repost of important information gets the word around. Making sure that I am an accurate and correct source of information is another. Misinformation causes people not to trust any sources about essential causes. If I help deroot the false assumptions that people created, maybe I too can make a difference and help prevent more injustice from happening. Thank you.
I chose to do this drawing because I feel like all of these names should be heard. There are so many more that should be heard, but only so many can be put on paper. Say their names. What this means, in my opinion, is that every Black person who is killed to an injustice and their cases go dismissed should not just go away. It should be talked about. These names are just some of the names that emphasize that quote. What I mean by that are these are some of the names I've never heard on the news, online, or anywhere for that matter. I believe that all of these names need to be heard. Black Lives Matter to other people is just a moment, but to the families and the friends who never got justice, or to people with common sense, it's a movement, and everyone's name should be heard.
Why are children's voices being ignored in the family court system? My story is about something I'm still experiencing. The major issues are me, my two sisters, my mother, my stepdad, my father, and my father's girlfriend. I strongly believe in bringing awareness to the lack of children's voices in the family court system. The court system cares more about keeping a family together than the health of the family. There has been continued conflict regarding custody due to emotional abuse. The court kept us in the horrible, inhumane situation and did not make us feel safe. We were scared and confused, like lost puppies. We have had multiple CPS cases opened, and the abuse had only gotten worse after each one, so we grew too frightened to say anything about what was really going on. Our parents have gone to court, but we haven't, and the conflict was involving us. I could see why people would think that a child should not have a say in a court hearing. They might think that they are too immature, too easily bribed, too easily manipulated, or that they should not be involved in dealing with this big adult problem. If the court would make the child feel safe and protected, the child would feel they are able to speak up and tell the truth. If the court puts this big adult problem into simpler forms for the child, they could all get the details they need to truly make the right decision for the child/children involved. The way this whole problem worked out was unnecessary. If the court would have just listened to what we had to say in the beginning, this problem would have most likely been less damaging and messy. My mom wanted us kids to come to a couple of the court hearings and speak about what was going on, but she was told no, that it would be too traumatizing to the children. What resulted was the abuse continuing for 3 more years, and many more threats and conflicts from my father, until the unexpected happened and my stepfather was murdered. Eventually, we moved to get away from our father. We are still fighting so my mother can get full custody of us. Everybody should have equal rights, they say. But shouldn't that include children as well? I wish I could have been more brave and spoken up. But that's why I'm telling my story and spreading awareness of the injustices in the family court. In conclusion, everyone's voice matters and should not be silenced. There are always many sides of a story, and you can never truly tell who is lying without hearing the voices of all involved. So for this reason, we should allow all sides to have their say and stop this horrendous injustice.
In this piece, there are a lot of wrongs, from the separation of the water fountains. How I took on this piece of art was to show the problem at hand, and to make sure something looked wrong with the picture that would have looked normal at the time. I made sure the pipes that connected them were broken as a way to stop segregation. I chose to use graphite because, as you can see, it gives off a black and white feel, as a way of saying that the behaviors of segregation is in the past and should stay there.
Hello, my name is Curtis Gadari, and I'm a sophomore at Dayton Christian High School. This is my essay on fighting injustice. Injustice is an attack on another person's rights. I cannot say that I have seen injustice in my personal life, but I have seen injustices in the world around me. I believe it is our duty to our fellow human beings to protect each other's rights, remembering that all people, regardless of who they are, what they look like, or what they believe, are valuable members of the human race. It seems that injustice always stems from a prejudice or fear of some sort. People groups who have power in a society think that they are better than minority people groups, with different ethnicities, cultures, beliefs, values, religions than them. So they naturally treat those different people badly. Others fear people groups who are different than them, somehow feeling threatened by them, so they try to control them. One of the most common ways to mistreat or control a person is to attack their natural rights. In its most basic form, attacking someone's human rights could be seen as abusing power in a way that could almost be compared to bullying. The bully has power over their victim. Usually, bullies are stronger or more influential than their victims in some way or form, but power could also be in the form of manipulating the unsuspecting. I've seen many examples of injustice in the news. Racial injustice is sadly still very real today, not only for Black people or African Americans, but also for Hispanic people, people of Asian descent, Native Americans, Native Hawaiians or Pacific Islanders, and people with multiple ethnicities. People of color have a history of being treated unjustly by white or Caucasian people, and although they do not experience the same injustices as their ancestors did, these people are often still the targets of systemic racism. That is, they live in societies or countries where the majority of political leaders or government officials are white, and there is discrimination in employment, healthcare, criminal justice, and other everyday experiences. That being said, white people or Caucasians are not the only people who have been shown to use their power to cause injustice. In fact, this could not be further from the truth. The fact of the matter is that any group that has a majority presence in a society is capable of using their power to cause injustice. For example, religious discrimination is a common basis of injustice. Religious discrimination is when one religion treats the members of a specific minority religion badly, or when one religion has zero tolerance for any minority religions. Like with racial discrimination, practitioners of these minority religions are often the victims of injustices in employment, politics, and other everyday experiences. Islam is a common example of both a victim of religious discrimination and of religiously discriminated against other religions. The majority of the world's superpowers are Western societies that were founded by Christians or people whose ancestors practiced Christianity. In the East, however, Islam is a common state religion, especially in the Middle East. In the West, Muslims are often victims of injustice because they are considered the enemy. This not only stems from the historical war between Christianity and Islam, but it is also caused by the events in the 20th and early 21st centuries that resulted in Western conflicts with the Middle East, especially with terrorist groups. Because Western people associate people from the Middle East or whose ancestors were from the Middle East, with Islam and terrorism, they are often the victims of injustice, racial, religious, and cultural. It is important to remember that people from the Middle East are not automatically Muslim. Muslims are not automatically terrorists, and terrorists are not automatically Muslims. On the other hand, there are practitioners of minority religions living in societies where Islam is the state religion that experience not only the aforementioned injustices, but also religious persecution where practicing the religion could lead to death. These are not the only types of injustices that many people all around the world face, but the key to combating injustice is the same for all types. The most basic principle is to treat others how you would want to be treated. This is what I try to do whenever I interact with anyone, regardless of who they are. I would defend the rights of the victims of injustice by spreading awareness about their injustices or participating in movements advocating for their change. You don't have to agree with their worldview, you just have to help. Thank you.
I'm sure you have heard people say, I bleed red, white, and blue. This is something I've heard my uncle, my coaches, and many other people say. In my piece of art, I used watercolor to create drips of blood in red and blue to signify that quote, but on top of that, I painted a skyline of rundown and old buildings to show that you may say that you claim to love America, but do you love every part of it? I used magazine and I cut out people on many different pages to show the diversity that we see within our world today. The people on that are in the shape of a U and in the shape of an S. This has two separate meanings. It spells out the word us, meaning that no matter your level in society, almost everything you do affects most people. It also means that we need to be the change. People need to do what they can for people in need and fight for people higher than us in society to also do their part and help. You also could view it as the US, because no matter your age, race, size, sexuality, we are all part of America and everyone deserves the same care and basic needs that others get.
Hi, my name is Aizada Diallo, and my essay was chosen as the winner for the 11th grade division of the Martin Luther King Jr. Multimedia Essay and Art Contest. I guess the only time people think about injustice is when it happens to them. Charles Bukowski. To be in a state of loneliness and despair is natural for any creature with an ability to think for itself. Waves crash from left to right, flames dance in a synchronized chaotic manner. The wind whistles and roars, composing a sullen but charming melody. Light is scarce, but we feel safe in commonality. Our world's so drastically different, but somehow the 7 billion of us have to discover common ground and unite. It is only instinctive to perceive the world through one lens, shaped by a home life or culture. But for a child raised amidst crashing waves to readily immerse themselves into the realm of flames is uncommon. This seclusion of the thought process, also known as close-mindedness, is the hearth and breeding ground of injustice. Injustice is the lack of fairness and justice and will ultimately be the downfall of humanity. I was raised in a world of white while my neighbors were raised in a world of black. But in reality, the world is entirely gray. As I grow older and see more of the world around me, the two worlds are slowly melding together. It's different. The culture that I was raised with consists of mainly one demographic, the West African Fulbe tribe. In 2008, my parents immigrated from Mauritania to the U.S. with my older sister and I. We have maintained several aspects of our culture in our day-to-day life, but growing up, I've had to view the world through the lens of a Fulani immigrant and through the lens of the average American girl. My perception of the world has been shaped by several factors, from my parents' morals and beliefs in the world that I've seen through social media. My parents' perception of the world could have clouded my entire mind, giving me no space to move forward or backwards. I could have been blind to the possibilities of the world around me, constrained to one perception, falling into the endless abyss of close-mindedness. But with this new ability to look at the world through all lenses, the child of fire realizes that his world is not the only one to exist. Injustices exist everywhere. The power to view the world from all angles allowed me to truly understand how large the world really is. I realized that being ostracized for speaking a certain language or having to study harder than my peers because of my socioeconomic status aren't the only forms of injustice that exist. Outside of the small bubble of mine, young children in nations such as South Sudan and Afghanistan do not have access to educational programs. Patriarchal roles are still enforced in Southeast Asian countries. All across the world, people are discriminated against for who they love, the gender they identify with, or for just simply being themselves. Hunger and destruction rage across Yemen and Haiti. Everywhere you look, there is injustice. But I had the audacity to believe that my world was the only world. That was all I knew existed. Oppression and injustices will always exist as long as humans remain diverse. But just as Dr. King once said, oppressed people cannot remain oppressed forever. The yearning for freedom eventually manifests itself. This change can only occur if we look beyond these injustices and deeper into the authenticity that lies within. The child of the wind reaps and wallows in sorrow as he realizes that all realms contain hardships and inequalities. Despite this, he is ready to open his eyes and widen his perception of the world. I realize that differences are inevitable, otherwise we would not be humans, just dull, soulless clones of one another. I've learned that the injustices that I've experienced in the 16 years of my life on Earth aren't the only ones to exist. Suffering and anger occur simultaneously. Injustices are amorphous, molding into undefined shapes or forms, but at the same time they are as clear and apparent as daylight. That old man next door who lived his entire life unhappy because he couldn't marry the love of his life, or the young children in poor families in my home country who won't be able to live a happy life due to destitution and a corrupt government system. All around seeds of injustice emerge when we refuse to acknowledge the birth of possibilities our world has to hold. To view our differences with curiosity rather than blatant disrespect is what we must strive for. Every day I try to look at the world from a perspective different from my own because I believe that open-mindedness will slowly cut to the root of injustice and tear the seed to shreds of eventual nothingness. I encourage the rest of the world to do the same. The child of flames learns to appreciate all the other realms no matter how different they may be from his own. Alas, injustice will become a thing of the past. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lillian Bowen, and I'm an 11th grader at Hoover High School. I'll be sharing my short essay, Domino Effect, that summarizes the piece I submitted for this contest. Every day, hate is spread from person to person. A domino effect plagues our communities. When we hurt one, we hurt all. In my piece, a young girl is pictured crying, dominoes surround her as they collapse. Whether it be racism, ableism, or prejudice against any group, hatred is a mirrored action. The only solution is to pick up these collapsed dominoes and rebuild, which is represented by the helping hand in the background. The instinct to fire back when we are hurt is strong, yet love is stronger. Break the cycle, it could stop with you.
Hello, my name is Kara O'Brien, and this is my Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. 2021 Essay Contest essay. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was known for his amazing courage in standing up for and facing inequalities. This was an inspiration to people and would continue to be an inspiration for decades to come. An inequality in today's society that I strongly feel relates to me is the fact that women are not treated equally to men when it comes to working a professional job. Growing up, I have always been interested in pursuing a career in the law. Recorded in 2020, the percentage of women working as attorneys is 37.4%, compared to 66.6% male attorneys. Women are slowly but surely increasing their presence in the legal field. Many people have an idea that men are more suited to be lawyers. According to a popular blog, Miss JD, there are 4 main reasons for the major gaps between these percentages provided above. 1. Traditional sexual stereotype or gender discrimination. 2. Work-life balance. 3. Sexual harassment. And 4. Gender wage gap. To further explain these ideas, there are beliefs dating back decades that women have too many emotions to handle the stress of a courtroom, and that women do not have the time to be effective lawyers because they are responsible for taking care of their children. Sadly, it is common for men in power to take advantage of women in a lower position of power. Further, male lawyers are historically paid more than female lawyers. While this is a problem much larger than me, there are some ways that I can help with this situation. Steubenville High School has a small but mighty mock trial team. To help influence women to join the field, I could make social media posts, posters, or simply spread the word of the mock trial team to my peers. I could also inform women about these percentages mentioned earlier, with a goal to find females who are interested in the law but scared to commit to this profession. Knowing that someone is going through the same struggles as you makes you feel like you are actually having a reasonable shot at succeeding. Without my role models, I would have been too scared to try and involve myself. Both of my parents are attorneys, so growing up in this environment has helped me to understand the injustices of the law industry. I've seen both of my parents work incredibly hard, but my mother has always shown me how much harder she has to work. My mother manages to keep the house together, cook dinner, make sure all 3 of her children are where they need to be, and still works to be the absolute best attorney she is able to be. Seeing her, Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States, and Arabia Mansfield, the first female lawyer in the United States, has inspired me. Knowing that these women have accomplished my goals while facing inequalities makes it seem like I am capable. They make it seem like my goal of being the best lawyer out of both males and females in my specialty is something that I will be able to accomplish. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sophia Murphy, and I'm a senior at Hoover High School. The injustice I chose to represent in my artwork was sexism. I chose sexism because it is something that I have had to deal with as well as many others. The earth represents everyone affected, and the scale on top represents that men are generally viewed as more valuable than women. The woman is breaking out of the chain that traps her to the world and its beliefs. She believes that everyone should be treated equally. I chose purple for the background to represent equality.
Hi, I'm Mary Tarosi, Director of Public Affairs for the Ohio Civil Rights Commission. Every year, the Ohio Civil Rights Commission presents an award to an outstanding Ohio teacher with a commitment to diversity and teaching the lessons of civil rights. We call this our Excellence in Teaching Diversity Award. The last 2 academic years have been a challenge for all of Ohio's educators and students, so the Commission feels that it is more important than ever to celebrate the daily achievements of our outstanding teachers. This year's Excellence in Teaching Diversity Award winner, Amanda Okeries, is an English teacher and chair of the English department at Mother Teresa Catholic Elementary School in Liberty Township, Ohio. Mrs. Okeries has demonstrated dedication, a commitment to equity, and a passion for the enrichment of young minds, truly embodying Dr. King's message of fighting against injustice. As an English teacher, Mrs. Okeries created a comprehensive unit on the importance of being an upstander. Students read books like To Kill a Mockingbird, Night, and others that shine light on the tragedies of hate and discrimination. And then they study the historical context of these books so that they can truly understand them. Things like racial segregation and anti-Semitism before and during World War II. Students are asked questions like, what injustices are important to you, and how can you act? She teaches that it is not enough to abstain from evil. We are called to stand up and speak out for those who are treated unfairly. In the words of her nominator, Mrs. Okeries stretches students' thinking about themselves and their world. By exposing her students to the failures of humanity as well as its achievements, she shows them the ugly and beautiful truth of what it is to be human and how important it is to look inward for what is right and then act outward toward redemption for all. Mrs. Okeries truly goes above and beyond in her dedication to teaching the lessons of civil rights to her students, and we are honored to present her with this year's Excellence in Teaching Diversity Award.
Thank you so much for this honor, and thank you to the Ohio Civil Rights Commission for all it does to encourage, support, and keep alive the vision of Martin Luther King Jr. I'm so grateful to Principal Briggs at Mother Teresa Catholic Elementary School for nominating me for this award. It is a true honor. And to Karen Geiger and Lauren Austin. We've worked together for over a decade, and during this time, we've created a curriculum that not only builds on reading, writing, science, and math, but more importantly, we work on building character. 17 years ago, Mrs. Geiger and I started a writing program that was founded on one idea, being an upstander. Since then, we've watched our students go out into our community and make a difference in the lives of others. Our school is not just about test scores, it's about community. It's about learning from the past and the present to build a better future. By learning about the civil rights movement, by learning about the Holocaust, and by learning about the lost boys of Sudan, and so many more history-changing events, it is my hope that our students will realize that the world needs upstanders, and that upstanders come in all forms. I'm so blessed to be surrounded by colleagues and parents who encourage our students to stand up for what's right. They realize that it's not just about standing by. We can't stand by. We have to stand up. We have learned through the stories of Salva Duet, Rosa Parks, and Elie Wiesel that courage means doing the right thing, no matter the consequences. I also want to take a minute to thank all the parents, teachers throughout Ohio, and students. These past 2 years have been challenging, but like so many times in history, true heroes can emerge. It's important that regardless of what's going on in our world, that we all continue to work together for this common mission, to raise children with the courage and the character to be upstanders. So thank you again for this incredible award, this incredible honor, and thanks to everybody who works with students, works as a parent, and just helps students grow in this world today. Thank you.
This concludes a celebration of the 2022 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Art, Essay, and Multimedia Awards and the Excellence in Teaching Diversity Award celebration. On behalf of the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed the work of these talented students and that you will think about taking your own actions to fight injustice when you see it. Thank you.